Hello everyone and welcome to today's small business training course. Today's lesson is called Managing Money and it's going to continue a theme that we'll spend a few weeks on in terms of how we manage our finances effectively for our businesses. So last week we were thinking about calculating our startup costs for a new business and thinking a little bit about what we might have to pay out every week. That led us on to thinking about the income we have and the expenditure and working out from that what kind of profit we're able to make from the business. So this week we're going to think a little bit more about managing your business finances, all the money that comes in and out of the business, and I'm going to introduce the idea of money pots to help you do this. So a money pot is just a pot, a tin. It's a way of separating out the money that comes into your business for different reasons. And what I'm going to suggest is that for your businesses, you start out with 3 different money pots. So these can be physical places that you put money, but you keep the different money pots separate from one another. So the first money pot is for all of your weekly running costs, and we'll have a think about that, see what goes into that pot in a little bit more detail shortly. The second money pot is for long-term savings and other costs, and again we'll think a little bit more in more detail about that. And then the third money pot is what you would consider taking out of the business as a personal income every week. So we're going to think on a weekly basis for all of these things. We're going to think about how much money on a weekly basis we would put into the first money pot for running costs, how much money every week we would put into our long-term costs and savings money pot, and how much money each week we would take out as personal income. So let's think about these things in a little bit more detail and start to think about what our money pots would be for. So thinking about our weekly running costs, the running costs are going to be different depending on each business. But typically they would be things like electricity, you might have a shop to rent, you might have raw materials to buy on a weekly basis. So these are things that you have to pay out every week just to keep the business running. Then the long-term costs and savings money pot would be for things that you don't have to pay out for every week, but you might need to save up for. So for example, you may need to replace tools every now and again or buy new tools. If you are buying stock in bulk, perhaps every month, every 2 months, every 3 months, you might need to buy some more stock. The long-term costs and savings pot is also helpful for emergencies, for things that come up that you hadn't planned. It might be theft of stock, or it might be personal emergencies, it might be medical emergencies, all sorts of things. And the long-term costs and savings pot is useful to save up for new equipment. So in other words, you are going to want to try and build your business to make it bigger, and putting money away into a savings pot, into this long-term costs and savings pot, will enable you to save for the future so that you can grow the business in the future. Now the last money pot is for weekly personal income. So that's the money that you take out of the business for yourself. So things like living expenses, food, it might be medical stuff, entertainment, travel, all of those sorts of things. So the third money pot is for your day-to-day living. and week-to-week living. So let's have a think about our money pots in terms of some imaginary businesses. So first of all, let's think about a business that we've had some experience with, poultry farming. So if you're running a business growing chickens, selling eggs, all of those sorts of things, your weekly running costs are going to be for things like chicken food, because obviously you need to feed the chickens, and you need to house the chickens somewhere. So there may be some rent for the chicken house. In terms of long-term savings costs, and here you are likely to want to put money aside every week, save money every week for things like replacing chickens that have died. Again, you might want to increase your stocking, but buy more chickens in the future to make your business bigger. And then there are things like water tins for the chickens, a bigger housing. So in other words, the long-term savings costs pot will enable you to grow the business. And then finally, this is going to be the same, I think, for any business that we're running. The weekly personal income, the things that you would use this money for are obviously things like food and drink and accommodation, transport, entertainment, and any medical things that you need to pay for. Basically, that's your money. That's the money that you're earning out of the business for yourself. So let's think of another example. So another example that we've come across in the past is running a milk vending machine business, a milk ATM. And again, weekly running costs are going to include things like renting a room, the space where the milk ATM will be housed, will be put. Obviously, you need to buy milk every week to stock up the machine, and you need electricity because the machine will keep the milk cold. In terms of long-term costs and savings, the money that you should put into this money pot every week should be for emergencies, things like theft of milk. It may be that your ATM breaks down, so you need to pay for it to be repaired. Maybe that it completely breaks down and in the future you need to buy another ATM. You may need to pay for milk that is spoiled because the refrigeration goes off. And thinking about growing the business in the future, you might want to save up to buy another ATM so you can have 2 ATMs. Now the third pot, the weekly personal income, is just the same. So that's for all of your personal living and personal expenses. So let's think of one final example before we move on to the exercises, just so that you can really get the hang of putting money away into different money pots to help you run the business. So this final example is selling fruit juice. So on a weekly basis, in your weekly running costs pot, you would put money to pay for electricity because you're going to need to run a blender probably. You might need a refrigerator as well. You're going to have to buy fruit, in this case mangoes, so that you can blend those and make them into juice. You're going to buy cups so that you can sell the fruit. You have something to give the fruit juice out in. And in this example, we've also suggested that you would have a white coat or a coat, which helps this business to look professional, and your coat for selling the juice would probably need to be washed every week, so you might have some weekly costs associated with doing the laundry every week. So that's the weekly running costs. That's how much that business would cost to run every week. In terms of putting money into the long-term costs and savings money pot, this might be for things like buying more fruit if somebody steals the fruit that you've got. Your blender is an important part of this business. That might be stolen. You might have to replace that. You might find that you've got a batch of bad fruit that you can't make fruit juice out of and sell on. And then thinking about increasing the business for the future. You might want not just to buy a replacement blender, but you might want to buy another blender so that you can double the amount of fruit fruit juice that you're producing at a time at once. And then there will be things like new coats and fridges and things like that that will help you build the business in the future. And then the third money pot again is the same as the other two examples. This is the money that you get to keep for yourself. This is the money that you get to spend on yourself. So let's have a look at a couple of exercises. So our first exercise is a group exercise, and for this I want you to think about a business that you're going to base this exercise on, and then for that business write down what things should be covered by each money pot and say how much per week you would put into each money pot. So for example, how much per week would it cost to run the business? And that would go into the weekly running costs pot. How much money each week would you put into savings and for long-term investment like building the business? And how much money per week would you be able to take out of the business as a personal income? And then the second exercise is exactly the same, to do the same thing, but this time to do it on your own and to do it for the business that you have chosen to set up. Do this for your own business. So that's it. Again, I hope that's clear and straightforward. I hope you will enjoy doing the exercise together, and then I hope you will be able to do the exercise on your own, and that would be really helpful as well. So I look forward to seeing you next week. Bye.